I'm not here to tell you I told you so, because I didn't. I gave some warnings on Friday's show about what could potentially go wrong for the Phillies in Game 1. And I said, I want the Phillies to win. I care about the Phillies winning. I actively want to root for the Phillies to win this series. But what we just saw in Game 1 is the exact worst case scenario. What we just saw in Game 1 against the Mets is worse than if Zack Wheeler had gotten blown up for 7 or 8 runs. We just saw everyone's worst nightmare come to life. Now, we're going to talk about it. We're going to break it down. And I want to thank everybody who joins me for what is an unannounced, impromptu show. But I felt like after watching Game 1, after watching Zack Wheeler go out and spin 7 beautiful innings of baseball, and then watching the bullpen implode, a bullpen that we have had questions about, that has had good moments, but I think we still entered the postseason saying, a couple of fingers crossed, that these guys are able to perform, that Hoffman and Strahm would be able to perform at the level that they did through much of the season, that as Estevez gets in the game, that he's going to look like the guy that the Phillies thought they were requiring at the deadline that could be a lockdown closer for them, not the guy who could occasionally be a little bit erratic in the ninth. This game is everything that's wrong with this Phillies team over the last few years. Now, in fairness, I want people to jump in the comments. I want the people who have been going at me on Twitter all night to show up in the comments and to make their case. I don't think they're going to, because what happens is with a Philadelphia team, when things are going well, there's a lot of jumping, there's a lot of harsh talk, and then when things start to go sideways, then people start to get personal and start to get nasty. Case in point, prior to Game 1, I talked about this on Friday. I put that thing out on Twitter that I said like the next day. I kind of regretted it. Like 45% Mets fans showing up at Citizens Bank Park. I lowered it to 30%. I was very wrong. Okay. Here's me admitting once again, I was very, very wrong. You go back to the very beginning of Game 1. That was a raucous, sold out crowd, 90-something% Phillies fans. We actually saw a few Mets fans. We had somebody send us over the footage from one section out in the outfield. I think it was 141 or something like that, showing like 2 Mets fans and the rest was Phillies fans, which is great. What did the Phillies do with that raucous crowd? What did the Phillies lineup specifically do with the energy in the building? This wasn't a case where it was a 55-45 crowd. This wasn't a case where it was a 70-30 or a 60-40 or an 80-20 crowd. This is a like 92%, maybe 95% Phillies crowd. Electric atmosphere at first pitch. Kyle Schwarber goes up in the bottom of the first inning. did exactly one of the things that I kind of threw out there as being a possibility on Friday. I mean, we could run back the tape if you want. I might, because, this is like one time that I said, "No, I was wrong. I was right about something else." I threw out the idea that, like, Schwarber might be the guy of all the guys on this team who are going to perform in a big moment. Maybe Kyle Schwarber would be the guy to go up and to take some responsibility and go out and do what he's paid a lot of money to do. I said this on Friday's show. Now, nothing will make anyone happier than if bottom of the first inning on Saturday, Kyle Schwarber comes up and cranks a leadoff homer. That, my friends, would absolutely get everyone hyped for Red October. And there it is. That is exactly what ended up happening. I mean, it was a picture start to the game. Zack Wheeler goes out, does all the ace things you expect him to. He's touching 98 miles an hour. He threw a pitch that was the fastest that he's hit since, I think it was May of 2022, something like that. I'll pull that up. I know I retweeted that somewhere. But, like, Wheeler was on his game. There were a couple of moments in this game where he had a couple of runners on base. It looked like maybe in the seventh, there was a question about, like, all right, does Rob Thompson go to the bullpen? And you listen to the announcing crew that, I'm not one to, like, buy into the anti-Philly bias, but there were certainly moments in this telecast where it felt like AJ Przinsky was actively rooting against the Phillies. Now, there were some calls early on that were definitely balls, but the way that he was just going about, like, oh, it's not even close, didn't exactly feel straight down the middle. That's fine. Again, it doesn't matter. Commentators don't matter in the grand scheme of things, right? The umpires, to some extent, don't really matter in the grand scheme of things. Like, things typically balance out. But Wheeler got himself out of multiple jams. Wheeler did exactly what an ace is supposed to do. Wheeler goes out and gives you 7 shutout innings. And I said on Twitter, I hope that the baseball gods will just give us the karmic payback for watching Roy Halladay go out and throw a complete game, 1 earned run game against the Cardinals, a game that the Phillies lost because Carpenter threw a complete game shutout. I was looking for that, where it's like, look, Schwarber was really the only guy through like 7 innings that was actually making contact with the ball, that was actually putting together good at bats. Some people wanted to make the comment that, like, well, Bryce Harper had a couple of walks early on. Getting on base is important. Don't get me wrong. So I'm not going to stand here and just say, well, Bryce Harper needs to come through with a big hit in a big moment. But, like, he kind of does. And drawing a walk is great, assuming that the guys behind you are actually putting together competitive at-bats, which they decidedly were not. Nick Castellanos went back to absolute man on the milk carton. Alec Boehm didn't look particularly good. Stott worked a really good at bat at one point. Rojas worked a really good at bat at one point. The bats maybe started to come alive a little bit in the 8th. It felt like too little, too late. I threw it out on Twitter. Like, does anybody actually believe that with two times through the lineup in the 8th and the 9th, does anybody actually believe that the Phillies are going to be able to put something together? The answer is no. The answer is they were able to put together some at-bats that got a couple of guys on base. Didn't particularly feel like at any point they were going to break through. The 8th is maybe the exception, because in the 8th inning, you were close to bringing the tying run up to the plate, and it felt like, all right, maybe there's a little bit of momentum. That 9th inning never felt close. I know that they scored a run. I never really felt that close. The 9th inning to me just never felt like the Phillies had a legitimate chance. Now, who do we pin this one on? Do you pin it on Zack Wheeler? Do you pin it on the bullpen that came in? Hoffman's a guy that you're supposed to be able to rely on to give you a shutdown inning. Strom has had moments in the season where he's looked absolutely unhittable. That didn't happen. And at that point, it felt like nothing else mattered. It felt like no matter who the Phillies brought in, there were going to be more runs. And unfortunately, if you're being a realist, not a Negadelphian, if you're being a realist, we all kind of know how this sort of game goes. We all know how this game plays out. The Phillies fall behind. The crowd gets silent. I said that on Friday. I said, I really hope this doesn't happen, but if the Phillies get behind, we all know it's going to sound like a morgue. And it did. In fairness to those fans, I don't blame them for having a hard time getting up for this game. I really don't. They gave it everything they had early, and this lineup continued to let them down time and time again. And when you get blue-balled as much as the Phillies did to the fans tonight, when you get them so close to a climactic moment of greatness where it feels like you're going to have a breakthrough, and you don't have that moment, you don't deliver that moment, those fans are eventually going to give up. Now, in the 8th inning, the crowd did start getting back in the game a little bit. And then when the comeback fell short in the 8th, and you saw who was going to be coming up. You felt like, all right, maybe that was our best chance. And in the 9th, again, the crowd sort of got back into it, but it was never again like what we heard before first pitch. It was never again like we heard in the first inning. Now, who does it fall on? Does it fall on the bullpen? Does it fall on the lineup? It certainly can't fall on Zack Wheeler. I mean, what else could you have wanted? A complete game shutout? I mean, we can't even make that case. You'd be a real asshole to do that. I'm actually going to go over to the comments really quick because I want to know where people are at after this game, because I find myself very disappointed, and I find myself asking a lot of questions about the strategy going into the next few games. Because for those who don't remember, you absolutely have to remember, Rob Thompson made the, I think, intelligent call to put Christopher Sanchez in game 2 because his home road splits are so decidedly advantageous with him pitching at Citizens Bank Park. You have to hope that pays off. You do. And then game 3, you need Aaron Nola to go out and give you opening day starter for many years, perceived ace of the staff, Aaron Nola, to go out and give you a sensational performance. But I hate to break this to everyone, and I think you all know this as well. It doesn't matter how well Christopher Sanchez and Aaron Nola pitch. If this lineup is going to be effectively dead for 7 innings and kind of put together a good old college try at the end, this series is going to be very painful. I'm not picking the Mets to win right now. I saw somebody say on Twitter, you're just actively rooting against the Phillies because you want the Flyers to look good. I have no fucking idea what that is. What does that mean? What does that mean? I'm going to go to the comments because I'm a little bit incensed after this one. Let's go over to the comments and see what people are saying, because it looks like there's maybe an argument going. So we'll go over to the comments. Josh White checks in on YouTube, says, absolutely pitiful. How is Clemens going to play a third of an inning and have the third best game on the team? That's fair. JD Reds checks in over on Facebook. JD, I don't remember you checking in before, but thank you. And if you can, go over to the YouTube channel on our drive to 500. We'll get there in a little bit. 500 subscribers, go subscribe. Thank you. It says, absolute disgrace, embarrassing, pathetic, bums. We get Hunter Mikos on YouTube, who says, I said the whole season they need to go all in on multiple relievers, and I was told I don't understand baseball. The bullpen was a concern. The bullpen has had very good moments, but the bullpen has had concerns. Okay. Chris 31 over on X checks in. What the actual F? Chris 31 says, one and done. JD Reds, say it loud. I told you so. I'm not doing the I told you so because I thought the Phillies had a good chance to win this game. And I think had it not been for the lineup being absolute dog shit for most of this game, they would have won this game. You can win a 1-0 game in the playoffs, but you can't look as inept as this lineup did. And you don't have to take it from me. If you're one of these like jamokes who jumps in the comments from time to time, hits me up on Twitter and says, hey, asshole, stick to hockey. By all means, you could do that. By all means, you could do that. I appreciate the fact that we have the back and forth, but I will point out that there are a lot more intelligent baseball minds who also pointed out the fact that the Phillies came up very, very small at moments in that game. The lineup did not adjust. The Mets did. That is a big reason why the Mets ended up winning this game. But we'll keep going. JD Red says, offense is trash. Bullpen is trash. Danny Small over on YouTube says, Russ was right. Hashtag RWR. I was right about the fact that it would get quiet if they fell behind. And was right about the fact to point out, I think I was right to point out the fact that this lineup, for as expensive as it is, for as highly paid as it is, for as much as we are subjected to hearing about how Harper lives for big moments, he came up pretty big in the 8th with a nice hit. 2 walks are fine. Are they defining postseason moments? They are not. Again, if people behind him are hitting well, by all means, get on base. The walk is great. If no one else is hitting, you're just kind of stranded. You're just out there. Hunter Miko says it's Orange October now. No, it's not. We're sticking with Red October. The series is not over by a long shot. It is if the lineup looks like this again tomorrow. Then we're in deep doo-doo. Chris 31 says Mets remind me of the Phillies from 2021 when they beat the Cardinals. Christopher Naffy checks in over on YouTube, says before his meaningless hit in the 9th, Harper was 1 for his last 12 versus the Mets. Embarrassing. I said the 8th before. Don't judge me. Don't judge me. It's the fog of war. Okay. 1 for his last 12 versus the Mets. But he did get walks. That's what I was told on Twitter. He had walks. Sean C says, all those people in July said, enjoy what's happening right now, can kiss my ass. Who cares what happened across 162 if you can't win 3 of 5 in October? I think that's fair. But I'm not going to go totally Negadelphian here. Again, I don't want the Phillies to lose. I want the Phillies to win. I want to have a nice long postseason run. It's good for everybody. You don't think that I want to take my family to a playoff game? You don't think I want to take my family potentially to the LCS or to the World Series? Yes, I very much do. These are core moments. These are core memory opportunities for my kids. I want the Phillies to do well. But I think that some people live in a little bit of a non-realistic world where we're unable to just accept the fact that this Phillies team had flaws. We'll keep going. AJ Snap says, I'm baseball agnostic, but it felt like the Phillies played prevent defense the entire game. Prevent defense never works. We can apply this to a lot of things. We can say it's prevent defense. We could say that this goes back to for the hockey fans, the old John Stevens system of you get a lead and then you just sit back and you hang out and you hope to hold the lead. It doesn't work. I thought it was a very conservative approach, probably overly conservative. And again, the Phillies didn't work a lot of at-bats. Now, I can't give you the specific example right now because my brain is now legitimate mush. It was it the 5th inning, 4th inning? It was 6 pitches to get through the inning. It wasn't good. Mets brought in a reliever. Phillies didn't work at bats. I think it was a single pitch inning for that reliever. You can hit me up in the comments and let me know. Chris Freed says, I was at the game. I was at game 2 of the 2011 NLDS. Today was a replay of that game. What a disaster. It wasn't good. This is one of the worst. JW says, I suck. Thanks for checking in, JW. I appreciate the comment. I hope you have a great day. I hope your weekend turns around. It might, unless you're a miserable asshole. Then it won't turn around. You're just miserable. Chris Naffey says, Turner has reverted to pre-standing ovation Turner. Quite possibly the best starting pitching performance in franchise history. Maybe better than Carlton, and they wasted it. I would put the Halladay one up there. I wasn't alive for Carlton, but I would say that the Halladay no-hitter against the Reds was probably the best one I've ever seen. But Wheeler gutted it out. And I would say that this Mets team, just based on how they played recently, I think there's a case to be made that this Mets lineup is better than that Reds lineup was. So if you want to make the case that Wheeler's 7-inning performance was on par with the Halladay no-hitter, you can go that way. Maybe. CT Landry over on X says, I said bats are going to have to lead the way. They did not lead in this one. I would actually argue the opposite. They did lead. They led you into a hole. Schwarber gives you the lead. And, the old Charlie Manuel ism was, you have to, if you score more runs than the other team, you're probably going to win the ball game. And that's exactly what happened. Except you blew the lead. You had 2 innings that you needed 6 outs. That was it. 6 outs from this bullpen that, again, has had very good moments. 6 outs. Couldn't get it. Not good. Let's go over here. Chris Naffey says Middleton is prepping the bank account for the Soto offer. I don't know what sure, but there have been the rumors out there that the Phillies are going to actively go after Soto in the offseason, which seems insane to me. Sure, if Middleton wants to do it, by all means, it's not my money. You want to raise the ticket prices to bring another big bat in here? Sure. But that's another potential power bat. And at some point, you just need some guys who are happy to make contact and manufacture runs. I said this on Friday that if the Phillies fall behind, can we please, for the love of God, just take a moment and just reassess the strategy? Can you manufacture some runs? The Mets did that. The Mets didn't just consistently swing for the fences. Pete Alonso had a couple of swings like that. Lindor had a few swings like that. But what you ultimately saw was a team that realized we just need to make contact, get guys on base, make pitchers uncomfortable, see how it goes. That's part of why the Mets won. Oh, we go back to JW, who said, I stink. I just want to, says, yeah, buddy, pin it on Wheeler. Can somebody do me a favor? Run the tape. Because I know when we do a live stream, you can scrub back. I would like this JW person. Please scrub back. Find me the exact timestamp. Drop it in the comments. I want to know where I pinned this loss on Zack Wheeler. I just have to give you a little bit of a warning, though, JW, that in order for you to do that, you'll have to go all the way back to the beginning, and you're going to actually keep scrolling. You're never going to find it because I didn't pin this on Zack Wheeler. And so far through these comments, I don't see anybody else who's pinning it on Zack Wheeler because he's one of the only Phillies to actively show up in this game. But again, thank you for the comment. But maybe try harder next time and get it right. Okay, we go back over here. CT Landry says bullpens and bats. Mets got both when it mattered. Chris Naffy says, I think Schmidt, Maddox, and Trio could have something left in the tank. Let's get Schmidt back out there. That'd be great. CT Landry says nothing they do surprises me anymore. William Gordon over on Facebook. Wheeler should have stayed in one more inning. I blame the team for not hitting. I told everyone we don't want to play the Mets. I disagree with this one wholeheartedly. I cannot endorse the idea of sending Wheeler out there for the 8th inning. He was at what was it 110 pitches is what he finished at, 114 pitches. Like, he was well above what I think they wanted him to be at. And if the idea is to have a healthy Zack Wheeler, who had caught a couple of knocks this season, if the idea is for Wheeler to be healthy for a deep postseason run, no, you don't send him out for the 8th inning in the hopes that it like stays together. Like, no, you don't do that. You're risking losing your ace potentially. I don't agree with that. Now, do I blame the rest of the team for not hitting? Yes. Did I say last week that like the Mets are a tough matchup? They're playing really good baseball. Yes, I did. Dersh checks in and says, that sucked. Josh White asks a question. My question is, who on the team is going into the clubhouse after this game and before tomorrow's game and fire up the team? I'm really not sure. Dersh thinks that Wheeler's ripping the clubhouse right now. I don't think that's what's happening. I really don't. I don't think Wheeler's going to go in there and tear guys a new one after this one. I really don't. I don't know who the guy is, though, to answer Josh's question. I have no idea who the guy is that's going to go in and have the conversation. Sean C. says the book on this lineup has been written, published, and put on the bestsellers list. It's over. Jeez. Andrew Bagley on X says all the money in this lineup and they can't hit. They swing for the fences every at bat. And what happened to making contact? Nico checks in with a little bit of positivity with a what up. So let's actually address what Andrew Bagley said. And this is a thing that, if you were paying attention to the game, you saw this, you noticed this, but you also know the Phillies live and die with the long ball. This offense has been constructed the same way virtually for 3 years now, where you have guys that you acquired in part due to their ability to hit the ball out of the yard. Schwarber leads off. Schwarber's an absolute power threat. Trey Turner has power to him. Now, he's supposed to be your hitter for average, but Turner has some pop. Harper, obvious pop. Castellanos has the pop. The pop's been a little bit inconsistent in his Phillies tenure. Was also a guy who was hitting around 300 for Cincinnati. Okay, we'll keep going. JT Realmuto, very good hitter. Also has some pop. Alec Boehm was in the home run derby. Clearly has some pop. We can just stop there. I mean, you could then have the conversation. Oh, what about Stott? What is Stott supposed to do? Is he supposed to be a power guy? No. How about Marsh? Is he supposed to be a power guy? No, not really. Rojas, is he supposed to be a power guy? No, of course not. Now, Rojas, again, worked one of the best at-bats of the entire game. If we had this conversation before the season or even halfway through the regular season, hey, the Phillies are going to be in the lead, 1-0, 7 shutout innings from Zack Wheeler, and Johan Rojas is going to work one of the best at-bats of the game. I don't actually know how we would have thought the game would have played out, but we probably would have said that's probably not ideal that Rojas is the one having the best at-bat. And yet that's what happened here in game 1. It wasn't... If we try to look at this thing from like the 300-foot level or whatever, there are positives that you could maybe take out of this game. If you are really, really, really trying hard to find a little bit of positivity, it's that the Phillies made an effort in the 8th inning and in the 9th inning at the plate. Maybe they unlocked something. There was the comment made by the commentary team in the 9th inning that if nothing else, they forced the Mets closer to get up and start warming up. And that with tomorrow's game potentially being another close one, if Christopher Sanchez has a good game, it's great to have the Mets closer get up and start warming up. That's it. Like, legitimately, that's it. You maybe take some positives away from the 8th and 9th inning with the lineup not dying. They didn't totally roll over. I question where that was for 7 innings. And again, it's not like you had the ace of the staff of the Mets going up against you for 7 innings like the Mets had to face with Wheeler. You have a bunch of pen arms. I'm just having a hard time understanding like why the Phillies couldn't manufacture a run. I kept tweeting throughout the game, and this is where like some of the people said like I was negative and I was rooting against the Phillies, because I was pointing out throughout the game like, hey, it'd be really, really swell if the Phillies could just like score another run, give 2 more runs, give 3 more runs. to Wheeler because we all knew, like, if you paid attention at all to how the Mets managed to get to this point, to qualify for the postseason, like if you paid attention to it, you would understand that this Mets team got really hot down the stretch. They looked like a dangerous team. They looked dead to rights against the Brewers, and they flipped the game on its head. And we all said, everybody who's being realistic about this team knew that Mets team isn't one that you want to have to allow to hang around in games. People were trolling me. Again, I brought this up the other day. People were trolling me late in game 3, I guess it was, against the Brewers, where it was like, oh, Brewers are about to advance. Brewers are going to move on. And what happened? The Mets threw 4 runs on the board in the top of the 9th inning in Milwaukee. They go on to win that game. They advance. This Mets team is one that you can't allow to hang around, and the Phillies did. That's really where the biggest collapse came. That's where the biggest issue came in this game. The Phillies' inability to even manufacture a second run at any point in this game, especially, like, let's say those first 3-4 innings when the crowd is absolutely electric. The inability to capitalize on that crowd was actually kind of a microcosm of this season, if we're being fair. Now, again, if you just want to like wear the fan hat and think that everything's like hunky-dory and then I'm full of shit and I'm just actively rooting against the Phillies, like, you could do that, okay? Like, I don't know why you're here necessarily. Like, I think we all know, like, I try to be pretty level-headed about this team and all of the Philly teams. The microcosm of the season, like why I called it that, is because this Phillies team, they weren't exactly in position to put their foot on the throat of the Mets in this one, but like you had them on their heels with a leadoff home run. You kept them on their heels for 7 innings while Zack Wheeler was pitching a gem. At some point in those 7 innings, you do need to at least apply some pressure. Maybe it's not landing the knockout blow, but it's like it's actively getting yourself in position to put more pressure on the Mets. Wheeler comes out of the game, no runs given up. You've only put 1 on the board. The Mets are looking at it, licking their chops. Like, sure, again, Hoffman and Strom have had very good moments this season. Estevez has had good moments this season. Kerkring's had good moments this season. But, like, they had to be salivating. Once Wheeler came out of the game and all they had to do was score 1 run to tie, you had the opportunity to at least apply some pressure, and they didn't do it. And that's where the bats came up the smallest. Now, do you put it on Rob Thompson? I don't know exactly what you can put on him. I really don't. I stupidly, and like here, again, I'll admit it, a dumb error. My brain just lives in a world where I forget about the three batter minimum for a pitcher. And so I was like, wow, Hoffman, Thompson let him in for too long. No, I'm an idiot. Okay, fine. But Hoffman looked bad. Strom looked worse in some ways. Bullpen let you down. But I'm sorry, I can't just say this is all on Hoffman, it's all on Strom. No, the lineup has to produce more than 1 run. They're paid far too much. We're going to go back over to the comments really quick because I don't want this to be a 3-hour show. But I do appreciate the people who came in. JH says, Russ, you knew it. You knew the offense wasn't going to show up. That's why you made the ghost shirt. Oh, yeah. Shopped@therussjoyshow.com. There's still good Red October merch over there, though I think sales are going to probably slow down here, at least unless the Phillies, pick up a win in game 2. Connor Allen says it's Mishkov season. We're almost there. But that's not important right now. What's important is that the Phillies pull the nose up on this. JH says, I'm about done with the Phils as I am with the Eagles. The Eagles can't hurt you this weekend, but the Phillies, if nothing else, the Phillies gave you the pain that the Eagles have kind of given us through 4 weeks of the season. They actually maybe gave us twice as much. They gave us far more than we needed. JH also says, bet tickets will be cheaper tomorrow. Well, this actually does kind of lead into, and again, I was very wrong about how many Mets fans were going to show up, but there are probably some Phillies fans that are thinking about selling those tickets tomorrow that weren't before. I don't think it's certainly not going to be a takeover. Will there be more Mets fans in attendance tomorrow? Good chance. I looked at tickets early this morning, and any kind of decent seat was over $400. I looked an hour or 2 hours before opening pitch. And I think it was $235 on SeatGeek to get tickets up in the 400 level. I was absolutely not. My kids even said, can we go to the playoff game? No, not for that price. We're not. CT Landry says situational baseball. Mets 1, Phillies 0. Yes. Josh White says have to come out strong tomorrow and win the crowd back over. I think that is 100% accurate. They can't fall behind like they did today. And when I say fall behind, I know that they led on the scoreboard, but in terms of like at bat quality, there's a case to be made. They fell behind. This whole game, they felt like they were behind. Like how do I phrase this? Give me a second. Let me think this one through. If you hadn't seen the Schwarber in the first inning, and you watched the Phillies and you watched the Mets at-bats, just the at-bats, and you had no context about what the score was. You had no context that for 7 innings, the Phillies were ahead by a single run. If you had to watch all of those at-bats in a vacuum, which team do you think you would expect to be leading? I mean, obviously, you know that the outcome of the at-bats were what they were, that the Mets didn't score. But if you're watching the entirety of the at-bat, the Mets tried to work better at bats against Wheeler than the Phillies did against the plethora of pitchers they faced throughout the entire game. To me, that's a problem. Maybe to you, it's not. All right, we'll go back over here really quick. Andrew Bagley says, unless they change approach, how can they expect different results? I don't know, but this comes back to the same issue that this Phillies team has had now for 3 years. They don't change their approach. They are almost resolute in this belief that, like, we're going to stick with what got us here. Except when it doesn't work, it looks really, really bad. And that was another example. Tonight was yet another example of you live by the long ball, you die by the long ball. This was an ultimate example of you don't change your approach, you will get wiped off the face of the earth. And that's what happened to the Phillies tonight. JH says he could watch me for 3 hours. I appreciate that, JH. I don't know if I could. I would question your sanity if that were true, but I do appreciate it. CT Landry said it's a big game tomorrow. I think Phillies put up 10 runs. Whoa! CT Landry hitting the bottle early. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. 10 runs. I don't know. I don't know. Dersh says, is this team tough enough to turn it around mentally in a short series like this? They have to be getting flashbacks of Arizona last year. That's the scary part. That actually is a good segue here to before we head out. The reason that I have concerns is because, like, all right, the end of the World Series against the Astros, the bats kind of disappeared. But that Astros team is incredibly talented. So, for better or worse, like, I think that was an admirable enough loss to have to Houston. You can make the argument, they were cheating, and maybe they were. They were. But that was a series that I understood why they lost. The Phillies were a better team than the Diamondbacks last year, and the bats went totally silent. And that's why so many people were concerned, even this season, after the All-Star break, when the bats just kind of disappeared and the lineup was gone. You started to get kind of like PTSD about, like, oh God, like this can't happen again. And again, like, I called it complacency down the stretch, that the Phillies went 4-6 in their final 10, and they had an opportunity to get home field throughout, and they didn't pursue it. They looked actively indifferent at times. Trey Turner said that there was nothing to play for and how it felt weird that there was nothing to play for, even though they mathematically had gone into that weekend alive in the pursuit of the number 1 seed. They watched the Dodgers go 8-2 down the stretch to, take the top record in all of baseball, something that the Phillies had really kind of been on coast mode for, had been on cruise control for much of the season. There have been moments where I've said, I worry about the killer mentality. There were series against the Braves and against the Mets, but it was really more of an issue with the Braves, where the Phillies had the opportunity to extend the division lead to 9, 10, 11 games, and multiple times where the Phillies just kind of came up small in those series, and you said, all right, this is what happens if you don't put your foot on the throat of the Braves or of the Mets. They hang around. And when you have a team that hangs around and gets hot down the stretch and makes that run, that's what ultimately matters. It's kind of playing out in front of our eyes. Now, I don't think that the series is over. All the people right now who have gone full-blown Negadelphia, I think you're off base. I do. I really think that you're off base. This Phillies team is still incredibly talented. And if this lineup wakes up in game 2, they could absolutely go on a run here. They could win 3 straight. This thing's over. If you ask me right now, do I think the Phillies could win 3 of the next 4? Like, if this had to come back for a game 5 to Citizens Bank Park, Do I think the Phillies can win 3 of 4 against the Mets? I say absolutely. But the bats have to show up. It can't look like this. Now, if tomorrow, they have to be very careful. I said I don't know how the pitching rotation shakeup is going to work. Sanchez pitching at home is significantly better than away. I get it, and I hope it works. If Sanchez goes out there and pitches like, let's say, Ranger Suarez has in previous postseasons, where he's an absolute stone cold killer, then this Phillies team will have a chance. I don't think they're going to get 10 runs like CT Landry said on X, but I do think that there's a path here. The Phillies win a game like 6-3. I could see that in game 2. 6-3 is totally within reason. And by the way, if Christopher Sanchez gets blown up tomorrow in his start, we don't hold this against Christopher Sanchez, who has pitched well above expectation all season. Okay? We have to let's make a tacit agreement here. Pinky promise it. If Christopher Sanchez doesn't have the best start of his career tomorrow, it's okay. Because once again, it doesn't just fall on him. So the hope has to be that he has a strong performance. But if he doesn't, then this lineup doesn't need to show up. I'm going to put a lot of this on the lineup. Go out and prove that you could score 6 or 7 runs. Who in the Mets rotation scares you right now? Who's the stone cold killer that the Mets have in the rotation? Go out and earn the paycheck. Go out and earn the designation as being the best lineup in baseball. Go get it in game 2. I hope that Sanchez has a nice performance. I think he will. I think the bats are going to wake up tomorrow. And then we will circle back here. Like tomorrow, am I going to do a show after game 2? It's possible. I don't want to commit to it. I don't even know if this is going to go on the podcast feed. It might not. I have no clue. I didn't even give it a regular episode number. I called it instant reaction. I didn't plan on doing this. But after what I saw, I felt like we needed to have a conversation. And many people joined over on YouTube and on Facebook and on X. So I want to thank everybody who joined me for this impromptu show. I want to thank everybody who showed up, who commented, wherever they were at. We will maybe do this again after game 2. Hopefully, if we do, it's going to be a much more positive show. We're going to be talking about the resurgence of the Phillies lineup, the reemergence of, I don't know, let's say Trey Turner, Nick Castellanos. Maybe they'll have big games. We have to hope. Christopher Sanchez goes out and puts up a gem of his own. We'll see. Well, you will either be here tomorrow with some positivity or with some negativity. There's a good chance we'll be doing these post games for the entirety of the Phillies postseason, which will hopefully go many more weeks and not just 2 more games. Now, if the Phillies lose on Sunday, then we're in bad, very bad. I don't think they're going to. I think game 2 is going to play out a lot better. You can clip this and throw it at me on Twitter tomorrow if the Phillies lose, if they get the doors blown off. But I expect the Phillies win in game 2. So I'll probably talk to you on Sunday. If I don't, I will very likely be back on Monday with a reaction episode or something. We'll see. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the show. Don't forget, we're on the drive to 500 subscribers. If you subscribe over on YouTube, as soon as the channel hits the 500 subscriber mark, within the 7 days following that 500 subscriber threshold, I will randomly select a viewer, a subscriber on YouTube. I'll randomly select that person. They get to choose a jersey of their choice, any team, up to $175 value. That'll be my gift to that person. And it's a big thank you to all of you who have chosen to subscribe to the channel. If you haven't done so already, it's in the description of the episode, wherever you're watching, or if I probably will put this in the podcast feed. If you're listening in the podcast feed, the link to the channel's there as well. So I want to thank everybody. I will talk to all of you probably on Sunday. And I'm going to have to figure out this week's schedule because I'm going to be in Vegas for work 4 days this week. So we're going to have to figure out the schedule for the regular show. But keep your eyes out for it. Hopefully the Phillies have a much better game 2. Thanks for tuning in. This has been the Russ Joy Show. I'm Russ Joy. Phillies lose, but there's still winners in our hearts. Maybe.